Hello, welcome guys. So today we're going to discuss about our web development project of address book. So in my last video I described what the address book would look like. So today we're going to start doing some programming to get started to develop this website. So the approach we would take is that I will walk you through step by step to all the process to get it developed and to make it a full-blown website. So what I'm going to do today is to give you a brief overview of the project. So before I start showing you the program, certain assumptions I have to make so that it is so that you can get the maximum out of this project. So before you start doing this project, it's very important you have the basic idea or you have done the basic programming of each of the tools or software I'm going to use for this project, which is, so I'm going to use let's say MySQL and MySQL database, and as a tool I'm going to use PHP MyAdmin and MySQL Workbench. Now if you have never worked on MySQL, what I suggest is to spend some time writing MySQL queries using PHP MyAdmin and also MySQL Workbench before you start doing this project. Now if you, again, I'm going to use PHP 5 on this project. So if you have never learned PHP or you've just done the basic hello world, I suggest go through different functions of PHP. I have got several videos of PHP. You can go through them or you can check other blogs or other websites, but it's very important you learn a little bit of PHP before you start doing this project. So that's about PHP and MySQL. Same thing goes for CodeIgniter, the MVC framework which I'm going to use. If you have not done MVC framework or you have done some other framework, I suggest and you are looking at this project, I suggest download CodeIgniter framework and write some sample programs to get some sort of idea how CodeIgniter handles the model view controller. I'm going to have you can also check my channel. I'm going to have a lot of videos on CodeIgniter, so if you are new to CodeIgniter or don't know, just go through those videos before you start doing this project. And same thing goes with Blueprint, CSS, and also jQuery, JavaScript. Just learn a little bit. Okay, so with that, let's get started. So first, this is an address book project, so means we need to have a place to store the addresses. So what that means is that we have to have a table. So for this project, now I am using a hosted environment, which means is that I am using as you see the URL, which is iaspireacademy.org. So under this I've got a folder for this project and I have installed CodeIgniter, so that's why you see the URL ci index.php, which is sort of CodeIgniter's default implementation. So anyway, I have all my files located at certain places, and this is a hosted environment, meaning that it is not running in my local machine. It's a hosted environment. You can build it also in your local machine, so there's hardly any difference. Since my web hosting company doesn't support MySQL Workbench, so I'm going to use PHP MyAdmin to log into MySQL. So the first thing what we would do to get started with the project is that we would create a table. So we would create here the table which you are seeing is a AMP address table, and it's in a database called eClass K12. So I have got these columns, ID, which is a int, which is an auto incremented column, name, phone number, email, and address. Each of them is varchar fields, and so you should create this table. If you are using PHP MyAdmin, it's very easy to create this. So just go ahead and create this table with these columns. So once that is done, next thing is and again, you can use that using MySQL Workbench also if you're running a hosted local environment or wherever you have your database. So you can in MySQL Workbench, it's quite easy to create a table. So while creating the table, just one thing, remember, ID is the auto increment field. Means it gets increased automatically, and it's a primary key, and rest all fields are pretty much all varchar with different size. So I have 40 here, 40 here. Address one is 200. So once the table gets created, the next thing is to start doing uh, the programming within CodeIgniter to develop the website. So let's open Aptana uh, Studio to write start programming. Now I have already got some of the files created. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to give you a brief overview of what are the files involved. So as you see, this is a CodeIgniter implementation. So here is my web folder htdocs www, and I have installed CodeIgniter under CI, and under CI there is a system. Let's see, there's system folder. Under system you have applications, and under applications you have controller, models, and views. So under views I've got several files, but the files which are involved with this address book is I think, search view. As you see, each of the file ends with a view. Search view, new add view means new address view, list view basically list addresses, and list all views basically list all addresses. List view is list single address. Then there is a label view, there is index.html, and there is edit view, which is address view, edit address view, and home view is I think the home page. So I will go through these files. Right now I'm just going a brief overview. Address.php is basically the basic controllers, which really is the glue between your model, which has the SQL and database calls, and the views. So as you see, I've got different functions: function address, function new address, function view, delete, add, edit, updates, and all these things. Search. Then I have my models. So models, I think I have just a simple model, and it's not fully implemented. So right now, and I've got, as you see, I've got just one function which is gets the addresses. Now one thing I said is that there is kind of there is some sort of you'll have also, while doing the dilemma, is that even though we have model, but a lot of people, including me for this project, sometimes put SQL in the controller. Now just like the way here you would see there are some SQL which are here in this controller. Now in theory, when I say in theory, means in the ideal case you should have all the SQL related stuff in models, but sometimes sometimes you can go a little soft on that and then just have simple SQLs here in your controller itself. There is one strong reason for doing in the model all the SQL is that when your functionality is shared across different controllers. So let me say it again. So let's say I have a function called get all addresses. Now this is right now I have a model called address model, and I have a function called get all addresses, which basically returns the query which gives me the addresses. Now if I have two controllers, let's say address and let's say maybe what is the other one, address controller, and maybe let's say employee controller, okay, just for the sake of it, employee controller. So let's think of application where it's a company application, where company HR applications, where you when the employees come, the HR someone in the HR uses this web application to enter the addresses. Now the address get all address is called from two controllers. One is the address controller and the employee controller. Then you always should define the function get all in a model instead of within the controller. The reason being is, if you define it within the controller, then you have to define one in the address and again one in the employee controller. Whereas if you define within a model, and this model can be invoked from address and also employee controller. So this is all about modular programming, which allows you to reuse the code. But again, in a lot of times we sometimes take shortcut, and sometimes this makes sense, sometimes they don't. But anyway, so that's so anyway, coming back to giving you the brief overview. So I have a model which is address model, which basically should have all the SQLs related with the table. So it should have a select, it should have insert, you have update, and then in the controller you should call those functions instead of doing the SQLs here. But for this project, now I've sometimes defined some of the SQLs here also in the controller. So I'm not invoking the model every time. Okay, so I've got my model view controller views. Now let's look at this home page. Okay, so I have my home page. So this is a simple home page. It's all static HTML. So the way it is done is, and this is not doing any database call. So when that invokes, it's coming here. So the function index. So function index, when you the first home page, when you call it, so this index.php. So the way CodeIgniter works, if you probably know, is that this index.php gets invoked, comes to the address controller, and then this file gets invoked, and then you have data. I think these are just dummy data, but basically it invokes this view with the data. So home view. Now if you go to home view PHP, let's see what the home view has. So home view has this text. So it has view, update, delete, and then you have this. So there is hardly any PHP code other than a few echo anchor code. So the echo anchor, probably you know, in the CodeIgniter it builds the URL. Again, this is not a tutorial about CodeIgniter, so you should study the CodeIgniter before you come to do the this develop this URL. But for just one line echo anchor function within CodeIgniter, which allows you to build the URL. So let's say I'm giving just the address and search, and if you go here, if you see the one, if you see the URL which is coming, let me show you. If you see the URL coming down, it builds the entire URL. If you see the entire HTTP www dot, so that happens due to the anchor function. This anchor function looks at what is the configuration parameter and builds the entire URL. And so anyway, so when I'm coming see index.php, I've defined my default controller. Default router. So if you go to config and if you go to routes, you will see my default controller is address. So even though I don't have address here, if I don't mention anything, it goes to the default controller and invokes the address. So that means, and so what is going on is that when I don't mention anything here, by default it takes this one. So this address and this address is same. So if I don't mention anything here, it goes to the default. So then address. So that's about the home page. Now let's look at view. So when you do the view, it retrieves the records from the database. So let's see how that goes. So here, so I have the URL says view, so that means it comes to this function view. So here, as you see, I'm using the model. So this load model, so I'm loading the model address model, and I'm invoking the function get all. So address model, so that, and here's a get all functions. So I'm doing a select star from address, and I'm returning the query. So if you come here, it populates the associate array with a query, and it invokes the view, which is list view. So let's open the list view. Okay, I think our time is up, so we will continue from the next video. Thank you.